Welcome back to the channel, everybody. So take a look at this. All EK products, and most of them still in the box. So EK Water Blocks has long been a name that is synonymous with the absolute best in the cooling space. It is a brand that I consistently turn to for my water cooling projects, and other than a few minor issues, a company that has been really good to me both in quality of the products and with the level of after-sales support. Unfortunately, EK has been in the spotlight recently with accusations of mismanagement, racism, and unprofessionalism within the company. Gamers Nexus has taken a deep dive into this and uncovered some astonishing truths. And that has taken this company from a trusted name in the PC world to an avoid at all cost dumpster fire. That's why I'm taking all of this and I'm throwing it in no. I'm kidding, of course. I've acquired this mountain of stuff long before any of this EK news came out, so getting rid of it really wouldn't make much sense. I will not, however, be purchasing any new EK products, and neither should you. And that puts me in a bit of a predicament. So when I set out to build an insanely quiet, non-RGB, water-cooled PC designed around the Fractal North case, EK Water Blocks was my first thought, but not anymore. And that's where the feature company of this video comes in. They are an aerospace company trying their hand at liquid cooling with incredibly high precision CNC machines capable of milling the perfect water block. It's Optimus Water Cooling, and this Chicago-based company is taking aim at the top name in the liquid cooling space. I'm Jesse, this is Bartman's Bits, and today we're taking a look at this, the Optimus Signature Water Block. Now I'm going to be installing this on a 7800 X3D and overclocking the crap out of it, which isn't going to be much because those X3D chips don't really like to be pushed. You may ask yourself, wouldn't a better demonstration of the block's capability be to strap it on a 14900K and throw some voltage at it? Possibly, but here's my explanation. I am building out the Fractal North to be the quietest simulation PC while maintaining as much performance as possible. If that is the goal, then AMD is the way to go. The 7800 X3D goes toe-to-toe with the 14900K in most games, while staying at a much lower TDP and overall package temperature. The current generation of Intel chips runs at insanely high wattages, and love to thermal throttle even with something like a 360 AIO trying to cool it. Now, I'm not trying to see if Optimus water blocks are capable of taming those hot chips. There are two reasons why the 7800 X3D is good for this. One, the 3D chips prefer lower temps for optimal performance. While the regular 7000 series happily run at 95C forever, the 3D chips prefer a mildly cooler temp of around 89. While a lot of coolers might be capable of keeping the CPU under 89, they might not be able to do so while staying quiet. A custom loop should keep the decibels low. The second reason is that I'll be using RPM locked fans for this build, and having a CPU that constantly wants to unalive itself isn't exactly ideal. There's also the fact that AMD just released their 9000 series of CPUs, and I'm hoping to get a review sample that I can slot under this water block to do some more testing. And finally, I just so happen to have a brand new EK Velocity 2 AM5 water block sitting on my shelf, which will serve as the perfect comparison between these two cooling solutions. Let's go over the hardware I'll be using to test these out. The 7800 X3D will be sitting in an X670 crosshair from Asus, which, yeah, they have their own problems right now, but I don't have any other motherboard for that, so anyway, it's going to be sitting next to some Dominator DDR5 running at 6,000 megatransfers per second. The GPU is a 4090, but that really isn't important for these tests. We've already been introduced to the water block, so let's meet the rest of the cooling team. EK is out, Alpha Cool is in. A VPP pump and core reservoir connected to a 420mm Nexus radiator. Tubing is soft 16mm Primo Chill with Optimus Flex tubing fittings. What sets this test apart from my usual process is that I'll be using the Fractal Silent fans, as mentioned before, which are limited to 1000 RPM. This is ideal for testing as the water in this loop should heat soak and stabilize during testing, which should yield an accurate measurement for comparison with the EK equivalent. Mounting is very straightforward, as are most installations with AM4 and AM5 sockets. Screw in the standoffs, slap some thermal paste on there, and spread it around with the included spreader. Position the block, then tighten down the nuts with the included tool, which just let's take a second to admire this little gem. I mean, look at it. Like, Optimus is leaning heavy on the machining part of their story. It's hefty, like, look at that. They say it's really hard to over torque it using this tool. And I believe it. I think it works perfect. It's just such a neat little addition. And you have to feel it to understand. And yeah, I'm probably spending too much time talking about this tool, but it ties in with the bigger theme with Optimus. More on that later. Oops. After a few days of thermal testing, here are the results. To keep things simple, I went with a 30-minute run in Cinebench and a 3 render combo on Blender Benchmark. 7800X3D didn't even reach 55C under full load. Now, that isn't going to cut it for these tests. To get those temps up a bit, I enabled PBO, used the asynchronous clock, and raised the core ratio to 107. Then adjusted the magnitudes in the curve optimizer to lock in a stable frequency. So I ended up with an all core of just over 5 gigahertz, which brought up the temps a smidge. After a 30-minute soak in Cinebench, the maximum temp reached was 62.5. Hotter for sure, but on the scale of idle to 14900K, it's pretty chilly. I wanted to push things a little further, so I swapped out the 7800X3D with a 7950X. The goal was to increase the temps, and that was very much achieved. The 7950X has a TJ max of 95C, which, once reached, the frequency will be throttled to maintain. So if this water block is capable of keeping the 7950 under 95C during an all-core load, we should see it maintain a stable 5.1 gigahertz boost. That's the theory anyway. In reality, this CPU just churns up the voltage knob as far as your cooling will allow. It took a little bit, but 95C was achieved. Remember, RPM locked fans. This isn't exactly ideal for measuring performance. So I undervolted and locked the 7950 at a frequency that would give me consistent power draw and temps to go with it. With that all set up, the Optimus water block hit 78.8C during several separate 30-minute Cinebench runs. That's the consistent result that I have been looking for. So now that we have those temps established, let's swap out the Optimus block for the EK velocity. Same tests, measurable difference in temperatures. With the 7800X3D, there was a 3-degree difference during the identical tests. This difference was carried over during the 7950X runs. When running tests like this, there are several factors that need to be taken into account to validate a difference like this. The first is thermal compound application. I followed the directions for each block as accurately as I could. Optimus has you kind of spread it out with the spreader that they include. EK goes for the X pattern. There could be a variation in temperatures, but not 3 degrees, as Gamers Nexus has shown in his breakdown of different paste application procedures. At most, you will see like a 1 degree difference. So that's ruled out. Next is the thermal paste itself. The difference between high-end thermal paste and something you get from like AliExpress may provide a measurable gap in temperatures. But in this case, we're talking about Kingpin's paste for the Optimus block being compared to Thermal Grizzly for EK. Those are very well-established names and should yield almost identical thermal performance. Now, my room temperature never fluctuated during any of these tests, and because the same hardware and, most importantly, fan speeds were used during all tests, we should be able to take the results as accurate. So the Signature V3 consistently showed a 3C decrease in temperatures across all tests with the 7800X3D as well as the 7950X, which seems to validate a measurable gain in cooling potential over the EK water block. This does align with their claim of 3 to 6 degree improvement in temperatures over competing blocks. It's not a huge difference, but measurable nonetheless. Now let's be completely honest here. The goal of switching away from EK wasn't to find a better performing water block. It was to find a brand that could compete with EK, and Optimus has definitely delivered. Now that we have discussed the performance of this block, let's take a look at the quality. Teardown is as simple as removing the 4 screws around the cold plate. When you pull this off, you are greeted with the simplest of designs. Cold plate, there's a gasket around it, there's a little distribution block, and then this top piece. The little block takes the water and spreads it out evenly to flow over the fins. You can see the design difference between Optimus and EK in this component. Unlike a lot of AAOs out there, Not all water blocks are the same, with careful engineering going into how the water travels across the fins. Optimus markets themselves as a precision manufacturing shop turned water cooling extraordinaire, and it shows. The fins on the cold plate are machined to insane tolerances with the absolute minimum gap between them. More fins means more surface area for water to draw heat away, which may account for the drop in temps. The way that these parts fit together is just, it's next level. It is really hard to convey this with words, but the tolerances between something like these holes here and where those nuts go in to screw into the standoffs, it's so satisfying. The cold plate is nickel and polished to a mirror finish. The EK cold plate shows machining marks, and while this most likely won't impact performance, it sure does look nice and shows that little bit of extra effort. The styling is basic, with no RGB, but personally I think that looks fantastic. The finish of these parts is second to none, and part of why this is so expensive. This is the satin silver ceramic version of this block, combined with the satin black compression fittings. Both have a textured matte finish that looks incredible. So Optimus does offer a lower price foundation block with an acrylic top that comes in at $134. Again, no RGB available. So now it's time to wrap this video up. Let's talk about the pricing. At $269 for the water block and $1249 for each compression fitting, it is not cheap. It's not the most expensive out there, but it sure is close. The equivalent nickel cold plate version from EK is $190. So there is a significant gap between these two. Does it perform $80 better than the EK? No, it doesn't. Better for sure, but not that much better. Now, one key factor that may sway you towards Optimus is the 10-year warranty included with all Optimus products. This is a huge testament to the confidence they have in their lineup and is miles away from the 2-year warranty on EK parts. That says a lot about the company. They stand behind their products, and I'm starting to understand why. I am so impressed with the quality and performance of these products that I think Optimus will be my go-to water cooling supplier from this point on. If you want to check out the products shown in this video, head down to the description where you find a link to the Optimus site. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.